What is going on, guys? Today I want to dive into my favorite places in the state of Colorado. This is definitely one of the coolest states in the entire country. There's an endless amount of things to do. It is an adventurer's paradise, and I recently just moved into an apartment in Denver, so I'm super excited to call this place home after exploring it for the last 7 years. So without further ado, let's jump right into my top 25 hikes and places to visit in Colorado. Alright, first up is going to be Great Sand Dunes National Park, and this is in southern Colorado. The closest sizable town is probably Alamosa. These are definitely probably like the most mind-boggling sand dunes I've ever been to, because you're just surrounded by mountains that tower above 14,000 feet. So its location is very cool, and it kind of just makes no sense that this massive area of sand dunes is just in the middle of nowhere of the mountains, because typically you don't see sand dunes in the mountains. They're typically in the desert like Utah or Arizona or New Mexico. So this is a really awesome spot. If you have a national parks pass, you can get in for free. Otherwise, there is going to be a day fee. And probably my favorite activity to do here is to hike up to High Dune, which is a 3-mile hike, or you can rent a sandboard and go sandboarding, which is a really cool experience if you've never been. Next up is going to be number 2, and that is the Crystal Mill. The Crystal Mill is just outside of the town of Marble. It is an old mill that is an 1892 wooden powerhouse, and it is located on an outcrop above the Crystal River. It is right near an abandoned town, which is pretty crazy. So to access the Crystal Mill, you are going to either have to park at Beaver Lake, which is a great spot for fall colors, and then you're gonna have to walk the road there and back, which I think is around 8 miles. Otherwise, if you have 4-wheel drive, you can drive right up to the Crystal Mill, and is a great spot to hang out and a great place to see fall colors. Next up, number 3 is going to be Ouray, Colorado, and this is dubbed the Switzerland of America, and it's one of the best places to go ice climbing in the entire country, so a lot of people do flock here in the winter. It is beautiful. You are surrounded in 360 degrees of the amazing Rocky Mountains. There's some awesome things to do in both the summer and the winter. We visited in the middle of winter, so a lot of this footage is of the frozen waterfalls. We rented snowshoes for a few bucks in town. It's a great place to do some exploring and some winter adventures. Alright, and next up at number 4 is going to be Quandary Peak, and this is one of the most famous 14ers in the state of Colorado. It's one of the easier ones, it's one of the most accessible, which makes this popular year-round. Here's some footage from a winter summit I did, and there's also some footage of a summer summit I did. It's great in the winter. You know, I would definitely recommend snowshoes or micro spikes, and some people even ski down this one. This is a great introduction to winter 14ers. And if you're going to do this hike, it is 6.6 miles round trip with 3,300 feet of elevation gain, and this is just outside of Breckenridge, so it is not that far from downtown Denver, and a great hike to do. Next up is going to be Rifle Falls, and I especially love this spot because it is one of the few waterfalls in the state of Colorado. There's actually not that many waterfalls here, which is surprising because of the number of mountains. This is inside of a state park, and it is $5 a day to visit. You can also camp here, but you do need to book that ahead of time. And it is probably one of the most lush places I've seen in Colorado. We went here just randomly, and it was like one of the greenest places I've seen in the state. You can go below the waterfall, behind the waterfall, on top of the waterfall. There's lots of exploring to do here, and it is the perfect spot to go and take a family or just have a picnic and a nice afternoon outing. Next up is going to be St. Mary's Glacier, and this is an awesome day trip from Denver, Colorado. It's literally 1 hour outside of downtown, and this is a 2.4 mile hike with 1,000 feet of elevation gain, and that is if you go all the way to the top of the glacier. But if you just want to go to the lake below the glacier, it is a fraction of that. I think it's less than a half mile from the parking lot. You do have to pay $5 at the trailhead, so bring cash ahead of time. This is a great place to go year-round as well. Some people in the winter do some ice fishing here. You can go up the glacier. I've seen people snowboard there. Some of these shots are on top of Fox Mountain right behind the glacier. There's tons of exploring to do here. Number 7 is Conundrum Hot Springs, and this is in Aspen, Colorado. This is a big day or big multi-day. To get to Conundrum Hot Springs, it is a 18-mile round-trip hike with 2,791 feet of elevation gain. Bri and I actually did a 2-night backpacking trip here, which now you do need permits for, so you're gonna have to book that a few months in advance. But it's definitely my favorite backpacking trip that I've done in Colorado. It's pretty grueling getting up there with about 50 pounds of backpacking gear and camera equipment, but it is so worth it. And when you're up there, there's tons of sub-trails to do. You are below 214ers, so it's scenic all around. The wildflowers there are amazing. And of course, the best part is just soaking in the hot springs all day and all night long. Next up at number 8 is going to be Garden of the Gods, and this is in Colorado Springs, so about an hour to an hour and a half south of Denver. This is an awesome place to take the family. You can drive through the park and you can kind of stop at all of their little parking lots and pull off, so you can get tons of different vantage points of the area. It is free to visit, which is pretty awesome because this place definitely seems like a spot where you'd have to pay, or it'd be a state park or something like that. And it sits just below Pikes Peak. It's very scenic. The red rock kind of sticks out and is super beautiful. There is some awesome rock climbing here, but you do need a permit for that, so just check that ahead of time. Number 9 is going to be Maroon Bells, which is one of the most classic spots in Colorado. You've probably seen it in postcards, in photos and everything. It's like that picture perfect lake and mountain spot. And while the lake is amazing, you do need a shuttle, and it's super, super crowded, touristy, and commercial. So I'm actually going to be sharing footage here from a scenic flight that we did from Gunnison. And this was a flight that we did just above Maroon Bells. It's the only scenic flight I've done in Colorado. I can't imagine a cooler area and more iconic peaks to fly over, so I highly recommend this if you're in Gunnison to see Maroon Bells from a different perspective. Number 10 is just going to be the town of Crested Butte, which is actually right next to Gunnison. And this is just an awesome mountain town. It's one of my favorites. It's kind of under the radar. I feel like Telluride and Aspen get a lot of the glory, but honestly, Crested Butte is such a cool mountain town, and especially during the winter, they get pummeled with snow, so it feels like you're just kind of in like this snow globe. It is a really awesome spot to visit. You can hit the slopes if you'd like. You can check out the mountain village. You can just explore the town. There is tons of things to do here. We saw a lot of people snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, riding snowmobiles. There's an endless amount of things in this area to do. Next up is going to be Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. This I feel like is pretty under the radar for the state. It's one of the few national parks, and I feel like not that many people know about it. I didn't until a few years ago, but it's just this massive canyon kind of in the middle of nowhere and just in southwest Colorado. It's an awesome spot to stop for the day, and if you have a parks pass, you might as well, because it's going to be free. You can visit in the winter, but roads will be limited, and in the summer there is a lot more flexibility, and you can actually drive down to the river, which is pretty awesome. But again, any time of the year this place is awesome. Next up at number 12 is going to be Loveland Pass, and this is about an hour from downtown Denver. This is another awesome spot if you're just looking for a day trip, and especially if you're visiting, I would highly recommend driving out here. You drive all the way up to the summit of Loveland Pass, which is at 11,991 feet of elevation gain. You are surrounded by the Rocky Mountains, and if you'd like, a lot of people do backcountry ski and backcountry snowboard here, and then they hitchhike back to the summit of Loveland Pass and kind of repeat that. And if you would like to do some hikes, you can hike up to Mount Snicktow, Cupid Peak, Grizzly Peak. Those are some famous 13ers and some relatively easy hikes considering that you get to the top of a 13,000 foot mountain. So awesome spot to check out. Next up, number 13 is going to be the Springs Resort at Pagosa Springs. This is my favorite hot spring area in the state of Colorado. The Springs Resort is home to the world's deepest geothermal hot spring called the Mother Spring, and the Mother Spring actually powers the rest of these 25 plus pools, the town of Pagosa Springs, the school, the resort itself. It's pretty crazy. I never would have thought that the world's deepest hot spring would be in a little mountain town of Colorado. This is an incredible, incredible hotel. Bri and I have stayed a few times. We love it there every time we go. All right, next up at number 14 is going to be riding the Royal Gorge train, and this is in Cannon City, just outside of Pueblo in southern Colorado, and this is $49 per adult and $44 per child. Then there are other options for upgrades like club class, so you can get a better seat in a better area with more things like meals and drinks included. Otherwise, you can purchase food and drinks separately. This is an awesome activity. It's a really cool way to see this area. It's an awesome canyon. It's a great family-friendly activity. It's a super awesome just day trip. I had never been to this area of Colorado before this, and it was beautiful, so this is a great activity to do in southern Colorado. And next up is going to be Sky Pond, and this is probably one of my favorite hikes in the state of Colorado, and probably one of my top hikes in Rocky Mountain National Park itself. It is a 9.4 mile round trip hike with 1,758 feet of elevation gain. It is no joke, and as you can see, this time we did it in winter, and it's actually funny, I think the 2 times I've done Sky Pond, both have been in winter. That is definitely an added element, and you should definitely make sure you have some safety things with you, micro spikes, crampons, snowshoes, ice axe. There is a part where you are climbing a very steep slanted ice wall. Not quite a waterfall, but a pretty steep area of ice. So it definitely helps to have safety, and you are right under the Shark's Tooth at Sky Pond, which is just some of the best views in the park. Next up is going to be Lake Haiyaha, and I have heard locals say Lake Haiyaha and Lake Haiyaha, so I'm not entirely sure how it's pronounced since we've heard both from locals, so please comment below which one I should be saying for future notice. But this is a 3.6 mile hike, and it has 846 feet of elevation gain. This is going to take off from Bear Lake Trailhead, but you can also take Glacier Gorge Trailhead if you would like. It would just add a quarter mile each way. This is really cool. I feel like it's one of the lesser known spots in Rocky Mountain, and the water is super blue. When we did the hike, there were really bad wildfires, so it was pretty gray when we went, but I have seen photos where this lake is just shining bright blue. Next up at 17 is going to be Chasm Lake and Chasm View. To get to the lake, it is an 8.8 mile round trip hike with 2,542 feet of elevation gain. This is an awesome lake to do. It is right under Long's Peak, which is the only 14er in Rocky Mountain National Park. It is an amazing sunrise hike if you want to get up early, as Long's Peak and the Diamond light up orange from Alpenglow, and in the distance you can see Twin Sisters Peak, which is really cool. And then a little addition to this, I added Chasm View, and this is actually partly up the way to Long's Peak, especially if you're going to be climbing the cables route, but this is my favorite spot in the entire park. It doesn't really pop up on all trails, so I included a little map to show where it is. It's kind of just south of the boulder field. If you're up for it, it is an amazing view of Long's Peak. Next up is going to be Mount Evans and Mount Bierstadt. Mount Evans is unique because it is one of 2 14ers that you can drive all the way to the top 2. It is only open during the summer months because the road gets way too gnarly in the winter. The Mount Evans Scenic Byway is the highest paved road in North America, which is really unique, and it goes all the way to the 14,264 foot summit. There's a bunch of hikes here, a bunch of ways to hike your way to the top if you'd like. And one mountain over is Mount Bierstadt, which you can access from Mount Evans if you hike the Sawtooth Ridge, or you can make it up from Gunnison Pass, which is just a few roads over, but it is an incredible area. And what I really like about Bierstadt is that it is a great beginner 14er, it's a great beginner winter 14er, so both Mount Evans and Bierstadt are incredible. Next up is going to be Paint Mines Interpretive Park, and this is kind of like a cool gem in the middle of nowhere in Colorado. This is on the side of Colorado that I call the Kansas of Colorado because it's pretty much east of Denver, and pretty much east of Denver I haven't found too many things that I like, but this is an awesome stop, and day activity if you'd like to make the trip from Denver or Colorado Springs. And it's this really cool geological area that has these incredible rock formations, and there are crazy pigments in the rock, and it is just an awesome place to kind of get lost in. Next up is going to be Twin Lakes, and this is actually right under Mount Elbert, which is the tallest mountain in Colorado and one of the tallest mountains in the entire country. Twin Lakes sits right below it, and it's an awesome place to hang out. It's an awesome place to camp, have a picnic. It's an awesome place to do something like paddleboarding. We went out there during fall colors to enjoy the foliage, and Bri went out on the lake just to paddleboard, and we got some cool shots of that. It is an incredible place to see fall foliage. So if you're going to road trip during the fall, I highly recommend checking out this spot. Next up at 21 is going to be Island Lake and Ice Lake, and this is a 7.7 mile round trip hike with 2,680 feet of elevation gain. This is in the San Juan Mountains just outside of Silverton, Colorado. Lately, it has been closed the last summer or two because of wildfire damage, but you can access it from the other side as long as it's not Ice Lake's Basin, because that's the area that has been closed. This is by far the coolest lake area of Colorado. Island Lake is just incredible, sitting under Ulysses S. Grant Peak, and then Ice Lake is definitely the bluest lake in the state, so this is a must-do hike if you're in the area. Next up is going to be Dillon Ice Castles, and general tickets for people 12 and up are $17.99 Monday through Thursday and $22.99 Friday through Sunday. Kids tickets are a little bit less. This is an incredible activity to do in Summit County. It's probably only an hour and 15 minutes from downtown Denver, and during the winter months they turn this area into a massive ice castle. They have water slides, they have lights at night. It's just a really cool experience. We went with Bri's family, and it was a lot of fun, and it was a great winter activity to do. But definitely layer up because it was freezing, especially when the sun dropped. Next up at 23 is going to be Glenwood Canyon and Hanging Lake. Glenwood Canyon is probably the most beautiful part of the drive on I-70 when you're going from Denver towards Grand Junction or vice versa. And one of my favorite things in Glenwood Canyon is the Hanging Lake hike, and it also has the Spouting Falls waterfall. Currently, this is closed because of wildfire damage and mudslides. Hopefully it opens again. It is one of my favorite hikes in Colorado. It kind of feels like a place that should belong in like Croatia or somewhere like that. And as far as Glenwood Canyon goes, it's an amazing drive. You can bike through it. There's some awesome trails and a lot of awesome roadside stops. Next up at 24 is going to be Mount Sneffels, which to date is my favorite 14er and has some of the best 14er views in the state. Getting on top of this area of Colorado is just unbelievable. Now this is going to be a class 3 scramble, so you should have some scrambling experience and some 14ers under your belt before doing this one. It is 7.1 miles round trip with 3,320 feet of elevation gain via Yankee Boy Basin. There are a bunch of ways to do this. You can go from Blue Lakes or you can go from Yankee Boy Basin. For Yankee Boy Basin, your hike length pretty much depends on how far your car can make it, or if you'd like in Ouray, you can rent an ATV and you can get all the way to the top, which makes Mount Sneffels about a 2-mile hike round trip. Number 25 is going to be the DeCaLiBron, and this is a 7-mile hike with 3,136 feet of elevation gain. You're going to be taking off from Kite Lake Trailhead, and I especially like this hike because if you're new to 14ers, this is a great beginner 14er route, and the best part about it is that in one day and in 7 miles, you're going to bang out 4 14ers. You're going to be summiting Mount Democrat, Cameron, Lincoln, and Bross. We personally went clockwise, and I would recommend that. Some people don't like going down Bross, but as long as you're careful and go slow, you're going to be just fine. And that is going to wrap up my top 25 hikes and places to visit in Colorado. Again, this is one of the coolest states in the country. You could explore here for a lifetime and still not even make a dent into how many amazing things there are to do here. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're coming to Colorado, hopefully this can help you in some of your trip planning. And if you're a local, maybe there's some hikes here that you hadn't heard of, and hopefully you can check some of them out. So please like and subscribe for more, and I appreciate all of the support and hope to see you guys on a future video. Thank you for watching.